Why am I doing all this stuff and having to put our tRPC React provider inside of another provider? So one of the things that I'm trying to avoid here is something that is unique to server-side rendering. This didn't used to exist in base React, but as we started doing more things on the server side, we had to make sure that things on the server match what is on the client. So what I'm doing here is to check when the provider, which we've said is a client component, we've declared it to be so on the top here with use client. Once it mounts through this use effect, we want to set use is mounted to be true, thus triggering a re-render. Because initially, when we go through and this component is evaluated, the state is currently false. We're not mounted. So if we're not mounted, then we return null. We don't do anything at all. In this way, it's because we're going to be doing API calls. And before the API call has come in, we don't want to render anything because some things might rely on the data that we're pulling in. So until we get that data and until the provider and the tRPC provider is mounted, we don't want to render anything else. Once we actually have a proper mounting of our provider, the tRPC instance that we created inside of our init file here is initialized, then we can start to render our children. So that's the goal of this file. We're not only making this provider just for tRPC. Later on, when we add modals, we're going to be putting them inside of our provider too. Generally, modals require some form of data that exist on the server, but haven't been given on the client yet, or haven't been retrieved on the client yet. And so they'll have incomplete data. And when we render our modals, we're going to have some issues if the state isn't initialized. Data values don't exist. They're undefined. Those modals are going to hit errors because certain fields in past props don't exist yet because they haven't been retrieved from an API, for example. So this is why we're building this providers. We're going to be using it a lot later on. The last step before we finish up with our providers is to actually use it within our application.